pick up the steam here. We're told that the week of the 25th, Monday, September 25th, we'll get the details on those tax cuts, what might materialize, who's in, who's out, whether this is across the board, whether this really is tax reform or just a series of tax cuts, aggressive or otherwise, whether it is substantial or, to Stuart Varney's point, this idea of something being better than nothing. We've got Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk with us, Wall Street Journal senior video reporter Shelby Holliday, and last but not least, former Trump New York campaign co-chair Joe Borelli. Joe, if it is just tax cuts without really big reform, I'm not meaning to minimize that in this day and age, and leaving the wealthy out or curtailing the corporate tax, maybe not 15%, maybe a starting of a rate of 20 to 23%, which would be a lot lower than where it is now, 35. How would you feel about that?
Look, I think the president is doing beyond just telegraphing. I think he's making it extremely clear that he's willing to work with anyone on both sides of the aisle to advance an agenda. I think the Republicans have some risk of, passing a tax reform package that might not appeal to everyone, but that's the risk everybody runs in politics. Everybody in elective office always comes up short sometimes.
Is better than
I'm in the real danger to the GOP is to come up short on tax reform like they did with health care. That's something the president doesn't want. That's something the House Republicans and the Senate Republicans do not want.
Yeah, Shelby, I can certainly understand the logic to that, but I can also understand the frustration among some big supply-siders with that, who might be seeing a Reagan-esque opportunity, flittering away here.
Yeah, and the tricky thing with tax cuts is that you always create winners and losers. So even something that would be a winner broadly for the Republican Party might be opposed by Republicans in key states. So there are a lot of details we still don't know.
Well, you're talking about those that would no longer be affected.
Deduction rules, for example, that would be bad for states
Texas,
like New York,
California,
Connecticut.
Right.
Exactly. So when you create winners and losers, there are numbers. This is all a numbers game. You got to get the right people on board. But we will see. There are things that the president could offer Democrats, and him being the ultimate deal maker, he's laid out what he wants. There are some things he could give to get votes from Democrats, including dropping his demand to eliminate the estate tax. That's something Democrats do not want. Like you said, not lowering taxes for rich individuals, not lowering the corporate rate as much. Democrats always say corporations need to pay their fair share. In this case, it does sound like Democrats think corporations should pay a little less in taxes. Yeah,
I don't know if they'll like the 15% rate, but Charlie, we're already getting a sense from even those on the Hill, Speaker Ryan comes to mind. I talked to Rob Portman of Ohio, who was saying, 15% is just unrealistic. 20, 23% might be more the sweet spot. But they're using that as a starting figure. Yeah. Well, and I always think that's dangerous. I think because you just go with your just off-the-chart figure, right, first.
Yeah, that's how you start a negotiation conversation. And one thing you've actually covered tremendously well in the show, there's two totally different things, and they're getting conflated right now. Tax cuts and tax reform are two different things, and they're getting conflated in the media conversation.
Can I just add, the president tweeted this morning, and he said biggest tax cuts and reform in one tweet.
Right, but so
even he's conflating them.
No, he is. But he wants to put them all together. My point being is that they're two different things that they're trying to put together. It's very dangerous because tax cuts mean rates go down for everyone, usually income tax cuts. Tax reform means we're going to actually change the way the structures are put together. Deductions, the way people file, carried interest rate deduction, all those sorts of things. Now, here's the problem, is that when you get to actual tax reform, then you have to break the filibuster. If you get closer to tax cuts, usually...
That's exactly right.
So it's two different things. They're going to try to
pile them all together. So reform is more the Herculean task.
That's right. Yeah, precisely. Right. I mean, tax cuts, George W. Bush got tax cuts through. Right. Even Barack Obama got some demand-side tax cuts through back in 08 and 09. So this is the task ahead of the president, which is why he's courting Democrats. But,
a lot of conservatives make a lot of sense when they talk about this notion that, well, a 10-year tax or whatever is better than nothing. It's still something that can bounce back to what it was, and we've seen history of that. And these days, you can't plan beyond 10 years anyway. I understand that. But there is a bit of disappointment here that it might not pan out to get those votes. And I know the Washington ways, but and I hope I'm wrong on a lot of this, but it looks like it's potentially getting so watered down as we speak that normally they're telegraphing or preparing us for the worst.
Look, even Paul Ryan came out with a 20% plan, which is not that far off. So I don't think there's that much of a concerted effort to move far away from that 15 points.
But see what I mean? To Charlie's one, when you come out the gate with that, you've already stated, all right, 15 is unrealistic. I'm going to start in the low 20s.
But he's right. It's a negotiation tactic, and I think we're getting lost in the weeds on the specifics.
Well, I think it's a dumb tactic.
There was an article in Politico recently that showed the Democrats' own internal polling has the fact that this resist narrative, this standing in the way of everything President Trump does, is just not working for them going to 2018. Look at the big picture. These are two parties that are now being blamed for not accomplishing as much as they're promising. And the president has natural allies on both sides his agenda. And he's doing the right thing.
And he's a maverick to begin with. He owes nothing to the Republican establishment, and he's been making that good. But let me ask you, so you touched on it.
He owes nothing to them, but he needs them.
I understand that. But one of the things he has to work on, and maybe that was the purpose of Elaine Chao in the middle of the day yesterday, saying, an infrastructure plan could be forthcoming. Is that a teaser to Democrats? Forget about whether you would include the rich or have an estate tax or not. That's something they really want to see. Chuck Schumer, of course, has built a career on it, looks forward to it. Nancy Pelosi has argued this through Democratic and Republican presidents alike, that's the carrot he's holding out. It might dangle at this dinner tonight.
Yeah, and it's been floated throughout the week. But I would be very nervous if I were Republicans for this dinner tonight. We saw what happened last time. Chuck and Nancy were in the White House. Trump gave them what they wanted. They definitely want infrastructure. I think where this is headed, though... Are you
saying that he was rolled?
I could argue it both ways. I don't necessarily think he was rolled, but he was clearly fed up with Republicans, was willing to cut a deal with the Democrats. I'm not sure how much more he's willing to.
Clinton did it. Clinton did it.
Yeah,
but I would say where this is headed, though, is a little bit scary for Republicans, because if you do offer infrastructure and you want these massive tax cuts, you have a lot of deficit hawks who are not going to want to add to the national debt.